service here today. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for holding this hearing and making this a top priority for our new majority. It's so vital that we do this. And I know it's been referenced, but it has been frustrating that this is the first hearing we're having on this. As everybody knows, COVID began, in the spring of 20, and obviously we have been concerned about fraud in this space for the last 2 years, but this is the first hearing we're having. And it's not for a lack of trying. I just want to reference 2 letters that, at the time, our Republican leader, Mr. Brady, sent to this committee asking for a hearing. March 12th, 2021, we write to the chairman requesting an immediate schedule and oversight hearing on the Ways and Means Committee to investigate reports reports of fraud in unemployment insurance programs enacted through COVID pandemic. No response to that at all. So with no response, we send another letter 10 months later, February 22nd, 2020, again, at the time, to the chairperson from Ranking Member Brady, Ms. Walorski, and Tom Rice, and Mr. Kelly, again, asking to investigate the size, scope, and severity of criminal fraud in pandemic unemployment insurance. No response, unfortunately. I would like to submit both of these letters for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Couple that with what Dr. Winstrup just said. We offered an amendment to get to the bottom of this on unemployment insurance. Nothing. So here we are today, having this hearing today. And so, again, vitally important that we use our responsibility with oversight to have some accountability in this program. Mr. Horowitz, I wanted to ask you a couple questions here. As we've heard here today, the more time passes, the harder it is to get these dollars back. And so it's high time that someone start asking questions and look into how do we claw back billions of dollars. My question specifically for you, obviously you're working in your capacity across all of government, uncovering these fraud schemes and getting real results in terms of suggestions for criminal prosecutions and hopefully convictions and some jail sentences for those involved, which will hopefully send a deterrent message. A bit of a hypothetical question, but if you had $2 billion today, how would you use those funds to ramp up efforts to recover the funds and hold wrongdoers accountable?
Well, first off, that would be magnitudes greater than we've gotten in the past for any of the IGs. But what we would do is a couple things. Increase our agents, the number of law enforcement and other auditors and analytics capacity that we have so we can find the fraud, pursue the fraud. I would actually also then provide analysts to the various task forces like we're doing already, the National Pandemic Unemployment Insurance Task Force, so that we can be a force multiplier in that regard. And then finally, very importantly, there's going to need to be more prosecutors, both at the federal level and at the local level, to deal with these cases. We can investigate them, but we've got to hand them off to somebody who'll actually go to a courtroom and pursue the prosecutions.
And is there an example of a state that's been very proactive in terms of hiring state prosecutors to do that?
There have been a number of states, and I wouldn't want to leave one out. We're working with a lot of states. We've had great relationships with a variety of states who are dealing with these issues. It's just going to grow, though, exponentially as we uncover more and more fraud, and as the labor IG, finds more and more fraud, and as we find the overseas fraud. Right, that's the hardest to find, and is going to take us the most amount of time to get to.
In your testimony, Mr. Horowitz, you provided a recommendation that Congress should amend the Program Fraud Civil Remedies Act to raise the jurisdictional limit for administrative recoveries of smaller claims. Right. What is the threshold we are using now, and how does it compare to the amounts we're talking about in fraud from UI programs?
So the threshold right now is $150,000. It provides the Program Fraud Civil Remedies Act that we can use the civil process through administrative means, which means we don't have to type the federal courts or federal prosecutors for lower dollar fraud claims. We want to increase that to $1 million because we've seen the extraordinary number of payments that went out that were below that $1 million amount. And the reality is that given the limitations on resources at the U.S. Attorney's offices and for prosecutors around the country at the state and local level, we're going to have challenges getting them to take smaller fraud cases. We at a minimum want to be able to use the civil processes to collect the money back for the taxpayers. And so that's why that's so crucial. We've had, by the way, bipartisan support for it. It just hasn't made its way through Congress.
Great, thank you. I yield back.
I want to thank the gentleman